This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 266, Creating a Custom Theme. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Today we speak about the different considerations when creating a custom theme. Hey guys, I'm Stephen Cross, and joining me again for 266 is Nick Laughlin from Enlightened Development. What's up, Nick?
How you guys doing? Not too much. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been working on. I got a new desk, so I'm pretty excited about that. It's a sit-stand desk, and because of that, it's involved a little bit more than your typical new desk. I had to get desk mount for my monitors. I had to get longer cables so that the cables can kind of be more neatly
going to ask about that.
Handled. And then I mounted the computer to the bottom of the desk underneath, which makes me a little nervous. But so far it's been pretty stable. And if you're looking at the camera, you can see this nice new desktop. I actually purchased, as part of the purchase, I got a prefab desktop, but the L portion of it was cracked in shipping. So I ended up actually going out and getting a furniture grade piece of plywood and finishing it myself. And I'm so happy with it. I haven't put anything on it yet. It's so smooth. I shellacked it over the weekend, routed the edges, and pretty happy with it.
So your desk's going to be really, really clean from now on.
We'll see how long it lasts, but I I like it enough that I'm probably going to replace the other prefab portion at some point, so that it's kind of the same material, and then I'll just repurpose the top here somewhere else. So yeah, pretty happy with it. Maybe I'll do one of the next shows standing up.
And so is it automatic? Like, is it mechanical go up or manual, or like how does that work?
No, it's motor. So
It's motor, right?
you have an up and down, and I think you have 4 presets. I got it from Monoprice. So each leg, there's 3 legs because it's an L, and each leg kind of has its own motor. So it's pretty sturdy, goes up pretty quickly, and the range is higher than most that you'll see. I think like it goes down to where it'll be like below my knees. Right. I think like 24 inches, and it goes all the way up to like my chin, so like 5.5 feet. It's a very, very large range.
How many minutes or hours a day have you found yourself standing?
I have not. I've only stood once for a few minutes, because one thing I need to do is I kind of want to get all the cables completed before I do it, and then I need to get something to like a pad to stand on.
Right.
Because you very quickly realize that standing is not as comfortable as you would think. But I think next week I'm going to start using it back and forth. I got to kind of I haven't figured out like the best height. Oh, the other reason why I haven't is the desk mount monitor stands. They have a range up and down. But I didn't measure. I measured the range from the bottom of the monitor, not from where it mounts. And so I thought I would be able to raise them, because you need a different height for the monitor based on whether you're standing or sitting. Because when you're relative to the keyboard, if that makes sense. So when you're sitting, the keyboard will be closer to your eye line than when you're standing.
So the monitor needs to raise when you're standing, is your point? Okay.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
And so
this is complicated.
Yeah, it's way more complicated than I thought. So I realized that the monitor, because it raises from the VESA mount, which is about midway up the back, and not from the bottom, it doesn't actually have enough room. So I had to buy an under desk keyboard mount. So that will work. But that hasn't shown up yet. So I'm still kind of working on it. It's way more complicated than I thought it was going to be. But basically everything's connected. It works. It goes up and down safely. I had to buy longer, I got everything done, got mounted the computer so that I could raise it and lower it, and then realized that I didn't get longer power cords for the monitors. So I had to order those, and then
which could have easily been fixed by just adhering a a surge protector to like the bottom of the desk, right?
No, I did that, but I didn't want to plug every single monitor into that, so I only plugged the ones I didn't have space for. So, and even so, the monitor that's all the way on my left, this desk is much bigger than my other one, so the monitor on my left, the cable still didn't reach.
What's the cost of this desk? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why I went with monitor price is it's much more economical. I was originally thinking about getting an IKEA one because they were the most economical I found beforehand. The IKEA one that's motorized is $600. It's much smaller, and I would have had to get two of them to be on the L.
Yeah.
The monoprice one ended up being, I think it was like $450 or $500, but I also had to buy the top. Which if you just do a piece of plywood, it can be like $30. And I had to buy the mount, and I got like the fancy gas mount. So I think they were like $50 each.
And is it like, can you customize the shape of the desk and stuff on their site, or? Oh, that's interesting.
No, not so much. So their site, they give you could change the color, I think, but they give you basically two sizes. So a 6-foot section and a 5-foot section. And that's actually another mistake I made because I measured it and I was like, okay, 6 feet by 5 feet. Perfect. It's going to fit. Well, the 5-foot section goes on the L. So it's in addition to the width of the 6-foot section. Right. So the 5-foot section is really 8 feet.
They got overlap. Right.
Which is, so I got kind of lucky that it was broken in shipping because it wouldn't have fit here anyway.
Interesting. We're going to have to drop a link to that in the show notes because I'm going to probably go shopping after the show.
Yeah, I can do that. I mean, it took a little while for it to show up, and they had to ship it freighting. I mean, the shipping was very expensive. The shipping was like $100 and something because they had to freight ship it. But I mean, it took me maybe a couple of hours to put it together. It's pretty heavy. It's very sturdy. I mean, I'm happy with it. I mean, I've only had it for a week and a half, but I already have more space.
We'll check in again next week and see if it's still good.
Yeah, I mean, the option to raise and lower is good, but even if I don't use that as much as I'm hoping that it helps, I mean, just having the more space and having like this customizability of height, because a lot of people don't realize how, like, for ergonomics, like, you want your monitor to be about 2/3 of the way up. Like, the 2/3 of the way up the monitor should be where your eye line is, and having like the ability to minutely adjust where that is important. Also, these mounts are great. Like, you can turn monitors into portrait or landscape or swivel them. So I'm actually I think I'm going to be able to collapse. I have 4 monitors, and it's always been, the one on the right has always been like just slightly too far. But I think I'm going to be able to turn 2 of them to portrait, because they're usually like auxiliary information anyway. Like, they don't need to be landscape. So I'll be able to compress it and still get just as much space. I'm pretty excited.
I'm still trying. I can tell that you're really excited. I'm still trying to figure out why in God's name anybody needs 4 monitors on their desk. But hey, whatever. I guess I don't have enough auxiliary information to need extra monitors.
I mean, just try 4 monitors at one point, and very soon you'll be like, "Oh my God, I need 5." I mean, the truth is, like, if you've got, for example, we're going down a bit of a rabbit hole, but for example, if I'm doing a project where I'm doing a migration, I'll have an IDE for each project up. I'll have a browser for each project up, and then I'll usually have documentation. And it's just, when you're doing something like that, having the ability to just look between screens for something rather than flipping through, and like being able to say, like, okay, this leftmost monitor is the code base for this project, and this monitor is the code base for that project, and not having to like flip through and say, okay, which VS code is which each time you're switching between things is just a huge efficiency boost. Like, I don't have to like mentally, like, when I don't have to alt tab to figure out which project I'm looking at. I just know, project A is on the left monitor, project B is on the right monitor. And so if I need to do something in one of those, I can just turn to that monitor. And it just, it's a huge efficiency boost when you're doing things like that. If people want to get set up. I was tempted to go to 6 monitors at one point, but I kind of talked myself out of that.
I mean, then you would double stack them, right?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, right now
mount them to the ceiling.
So right now I've got two 24s and two 27-inch.
I'm watching TV right now.
So I've got plenty of real estate to work with. So
John, what's new with you?
Exactly. Yeah. What's up?
Nothing now.
Yeah, I know. Well, what do I got? Yeah, I mean, if you're watching the video, you might see that I am in a new office space. I'm in Oomp's new Providence headquarters, and
we just lost John's internet connection.
It's open back up.
John, you just froze for about 10 seconds.
Cool. What part did I freeze at?
You said the Providence headquarters of Oomph, and then you looked off into the distance very dramatically and froze.
Well, that's
did they get their new internet service yet?
Yes. So that's it's funny you should mention that. Yeah, we do have new network appliances and new internet, but the access point is in. They have another one they're going to install. The access point is in a closet surrounded by metal, so the internet is sometimes not as cooperative as it should be. But yeah, we are having people come into the office when they want to. It's not a requirement, and it's in limited capacities. And it just feels good to get out of the house a little bit and be able to go somewhere and hang out.
That's good. Well, good luck there. Where is it? That's right around the corner from where you were before.
So funny enough, this building has Drupal history. Lullabot's Activity Center used to be in this building.
Oh,
so
I know which one that is.
We're in the same building that Lullabot used to be in. I think they were maybe up on the 5th floor or something like that, and we're on the 3rd floor.
What's going on with me? Let's see. Oh yeah. Now that I look in the show notes of what is going on with me. So I got a Peloton a month ago. You guys know what Peloton?
A month ago?
Yeah.
We're just hearing about this now?
Yeah. Is that the bike?
It's a bike, yeah. The thing. So my wife and I belong to the gym and went really frequently back in, the end of last year. I've gone for a couple of years. And since coronavirus, haven't gone at all. So we walk a lot too. So every day we go for 3-4 mile walk, and been itching to get back to the gym. We decided that was a bad idea, so we canceled that subscription, that membership, not knowing what was going on, and we decided to try out Peloton. My wife has done spin class at the gym pretty frequently, and I just did it once, and it absolutely killed me. I don't know if you've ever done spinning. Have you ever done a spin class?
It's just fast bike riding, right?
No.
No. I think I did once. It was brutal. It
was like the worst hour of my life, I think, when I did it. Maybe it was probably in December or January. But, we need some way to get, the winter's coming again, so we need some way to get some better cardio exercise. So we decided to get a Peloton and give it a whirl. And I love this thing. I look forward to getting on it every single day, and in 20 minutes you can get an incredible workout. I haven't done a ride longer than 30 minutes yet. But
what's different about a normal recumbent bike?
So this is I don't know what's different about. I don't know what a normal one means, but this is really all about the connection in the classes. So this has a screen,
right?
A screen in front of it, and you can attend live classes or pre-recorded classes. So you have a spin instructor right there with you. And I haven't taken any live classes yet because the schedule doesn't really fit when I'm, I get on when I'm getting on. I don't worry about when the live class is up, but they record them. So you can then jump on and you basically are taking a class with an instructor, which is kind of what you need to get like a good workout on a bike, because they really push you. It's a really interesting workout, and it's in a month. I can't believe I'm not tired of it yet. So
It's interesting. It's interesting that you bring that up because I've known people that have had Pelotons and they rave about them as well. And actually, just the other day, was talking to my wife about Apple Fitness Plus.
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah, they're coming out with this fitness service, and like we have Apple devices, we have iPads, we have phones, laptops, what have you. We don't have Apple Watches, but I was like, yeah, they're coming out with this service. We'll be able to use it on our Apple devices, so on and so forth. And I was interested because same as Steven, like we kind of need something to get out of the house in the winter, or stay in the house in the winter but still be active, right? And you know what? I looked at the Apple Fitness, and I was like scrolling through the page, and I'm like, oh, cool. They require you to have an Apple Watch. In order to buy the service and use the service, you have to have an Apple Watch. And I was just like, that is like the dumbest thing that that they could have done, because, obviously Peloton has, has the bike, but you can also get Pelotons. I think they have if it's not them, it's somebody else, but they basically have a video service where you can do the same sort of thing from your like TV or from your device. So it was a little bit disappointing to find out that Apple was requiring you to get an Apple Watch. But
I'm guessing it's because I'm not familiar with this new service from Apple, but I'm guessing it's because it's probably very connected to taking your heart rate and stuff while you're exercising.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And what it's doing is, I guess it's based on your heart rate and what your vitals are. It's gearing the workout towards that. So like, if you want to do like, high intensity and they notice like your heart rate's kind of leveling off, they may give you a different version of the exercise to do to get that heart rate back up.
Oh, that'd be a fun program to design. Like how to like seamlessly switch tracks like that.
I mean, I totally get it, but I just feel like, okay, like limit what a person can do if you need watch functionality, but don't exclude them, especially when you have like, I could just see like setting up my iPad and going, doing a workout in the morning real quick before, going to work or whatever. So I don't know. I think it's interesting.
All right. Well, on to our main topic of the day. We're talking today about creating custom themes, and mostly around the considerations decisions you make when you're going to do that. So I guess the first question in my mind here is, why would someone create a custom theme in the first place?
Well, I mean, I think the obvious answer is they need customizations in a theme that are not available through a default theme or a theme that ships with Drupal. Now, that being said, obviously Drupal has themes that it ships with. They're creating new ones. They're in the process of creating a couple of new ones, but it also has, just like modules, there are themes out there that you can get and you can use. So, the requirement to create a custom theme isn't always a necessity depending on your project, but in most cases, people want that, that custom look and feel, or they want things placed in a certain area or region of the page, and a custom theme is the best way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, any project. I can't think of any projects in the last few years that I've done that didn't use a custom theme, other than like small hobby projects on the side. Like for example, the home automation blog that I spun up. I mean, that's just using Bartik, but that's a project where I'm just trying to get some information up there and out there. I'm not trying to make it look nice. Any theme, any site that wants to kind of face the public and give a good presentation, I think it's gonna use a custom theme. And I think the first thing to consider is usually what your base theme is. And I think over the past few years, that's changed a lot. I mean, for a long time, I used the Zen base theme. I mean, in Drupal 5, at Drupal 6 and Drupal 7, I think Zen was kind of the go-to base theme. And then I think for a while, Bootstrap kind of took over, and Foundation I've got a lot of projects that have used the foundation-based theme. But I'm starting to see a pattern where companies are going back to essentially not using a base theme, just using like Stark or 7 or something as their base, and then just building out a custom.
So building their own base theme.
Yeah, like building their own foundational elements in their custom theme.
Right. So, I mean, I think that's, predominantly what we're doing is just that, we're using Stark as a jumping off point, and you basically using Stark as our custom theme, and then building off of that, which is not the same. Our next bullet point here is about child theme. I think you are right, Nick, in picking a good base theme. You want to make sure that it's gonna fit your needs for your project. I think. What are you? Let me ask you this, because you had said that you have not done a project where you didn't need a custom theme for quite a while. Just out of curiosity, have you done projects other than personal projects where you've used a off the shelf theme?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially when I started out my business, I mean, a lot of my clients at the time were actually a fair amount of them are still clients. They're small businesses. They're a plumber, electrician, hardwood floor guy. They literally same thing. They just need a place to send their clients so their clients can click on a gallery of the work that they've done, have a phone number to call, and have a website on Google Places. They don't need anything beyond that. And in Drupal 7, I would use, some of the sites actually use Bartik, believe it or not, but some of them you would use something like Marinelli or something, which gives you like a hero image or something. But yeah, I absolutely had some sites back in the day that used built-in themes.
And then moving into base themes, what are you typically using for a base theme?
Like I said, I was using Bootstrap for a while, but I've found the Bootstrap implementations for Drupal are older. We're running into the same problem. Foundation, they're updating too quickly. Like I'm at the point now where generally, this is a conversation I just started having with a client. We're talking about what CSS framework we want, and then once we pick one, we're just going to figure out how to implement that as its own base theme, because the Drupal implementations are just lagging behind, the projects themselves too far. And updating a framework directly is much less fraught with error than updating like the base theme. Like I don't know about you guys, but I almost never would update a base theme. And I definitely wouldn't update the major version of a base theme. So like Bootstrap, Foundation 5 is out and Foundation 6 came out. Like updating Foundation from 5 to 6, I mean, that's just going to break everything.
Yeah, and I may have misspoke. It looks like maybe we're using Classy as a base theme for a lot of our stuff, not Stark.
Yes,
so.
Classy or Stark are kind of the two go-tos to start with. And the only reason why you set those as base themes is just so that templates don't get missed. Like if you don't have a template,
right. Yep.
It has something to pull from.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so I'm kind of in the same boat. It's more complex than it used to be, but it gives you much cleaner markup and a better output.
And I guess it would be worthwhile to kind of explain a little bit about what a base theme is and why you would choose one, right? When you're building your custom theme.
Sure. I mean, a base theme is just where Drupal is going to look if an existing page doesn't have a template. I mean, that's the way I think about it. Mm-hmm. And so if you're on, for example, a node page and your theme doesn't have a node template, it just says, okay, I'm going to go look at the next theme in line. Which is why more and more I think people are using Classy or Stark as their base theme, because they're generally complex websites are overriding almost every level that they need to. I mean, there's not a lot of gaps in a lot of websites that I work on these days.
Right, and I mean, Classy's nice because as it it states in its name, it has a lot of classes to tie into. So I think that's why people tend to like it. It has those predefined classes that you can kind of just start writing your CSS without having to jump into potentially a lot of custom theme or custom templates.
Yeah, I was just say, the next thing that I think to consider is building themes. I feel like this is something that's changed significantly over the years. In the beginning, you would just kind of write CSS yourself, and then Sass came out, and you at that point you kind of had to start compiling stuff. Over the last, I think, I don't know, 6 months to a year, I feel like there's been some, maybe not 6 months to a year, maybe it's been a few years. Over the last few years, the way that you build your theme has changed significantly. Even a few years ago, you would build your theme locally, commit those artifacts, and push that up. And, over the last few years, that's moved more towards a CI workflow. And so I'm curious about how you guys as clients, how your themes are built. How do you compile them? How are you managing JavaScript and CSS? Is that, is that standard, or do you have like different processes depending on the client?
I would say that it's pretty standard. We're using Node, and I believe we're using Gulp right now. But those are pretty standard from project to project, unless the client has some sort of requirements for us to use. And some clients have had requirements on frameworks that we need to use, or technologies that we can't use. So we typically go with a Bootstrap, but there have been clients in the past that have asked us to use other sorts of frameworks as well. So it's pretty standardized, unless the project requires a change.
So for me, I have a lot of clients that just use Node Sass directly, and recently I've been switching to some projects that have used Gulp more extensively.
How often are you in a position to dictate what's used?
Maybe about a quarter of the time, half the time.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Because, if I work with a client that's an agency, generally they have a predefined workflow. Yeah. And many times I don't even have to build the theme. In fact, there's sometimes I've worked with some agencies that are still using like Compass, for example, to build their theme.
What?
It's an older site. And Compass I don't have Compass installed, and so I have an unthemed site locally. But I'm just doing development work, so I don't need to see the theme.
It's interesting. I see that in the show notes here, and I was like, oh, Compass, that's like old school.
Yeah, in the show notes, it's Compass the old way. But I have other companies who are relying on me for the whole tech stack, and so I define that. And normally, I'm just using Yarn to build it using Node Sass. But more recently, we'll talk about these in a few minutes. More recently, I've been incorporating Gulp to kind of help clean things up too. Gulp was I think it was in fashion for a while, maybe 3 years ago, and I started seeing less of it, and it seems like it's making a comeback. I think there was an update that.
Yeah, I was wondering if we should have the old way next to Gulp too, right?
Yeah, Gulp used to be the old way, but I think it's making a comeback. I think maybe they had a new release, or maybe it's just the projects I'm working on, but it's doing some things that are some task running things that are a little bit kind of neat. So the thing is, it makes it more complex, because now you have to, for example, I have a client right now that has a theme, and they're working on rebuilding the theme. And so the new theme is going to use, the old theme just used Yarn and Node to build. The new theme is using Gulp, a newer version of Node. It's got a bunch of stuff with Babel to help with transpiling. And so, now I need to figure out how to set that pipeline up so that both themes can be built, so that we can test the new theme, but also, the old theme is available for the website. And so it certainly has some interesting challenges, but It's still better than the old days when you would just literally write raw CSS and just put it on a server and see what happens. So I'm curious if you guys use a CSS framework. I mean, I know you're basing your themes off of Classy or 7 or Stark, but do you guys use something like Bootstrap or Foundation or Tailwind or?
Yeah, we're using Bootstrap pretty much on every project. Like I said, unless the client has a requirement. I think a couple of years ago, or maybe last year, client had a requirement for Foundation, so we did that. But yeah, I think Bootstrap's typically the way we're going.
I'm in the government work right now. I'm using USWDS design system.
Okay.
So yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, so that's sort of it's a component-based framework, basically. So that's sort of been interesting to learn and get to use.
So this is going to kind of flow into our next topic here, but you you mentioned a keyword, component-based, right? So what do you guys? What's driving that? Are you guys using your own kind of component library, or using something like Pattern Lab to kind of build out that component library?
Yeah, great question. So we are not using, so USWDS currently uses a different UI engine for their components, and I don't remember what it's called. And they're currently switching to Pattern Lab. So we just been learning about, they just made the announcement like last month that they're moving to Pattern Lab. We've been looking at Pattern Lab for a while. But what we're doing is we're not using any of the visual. We're using the coding side of the components,
right,
but not the visual tool for people to like mix and match components and play with them. So we'll get to that point at some point. Right now, we're just building our components in that methodology. So we have a components folder with a component like an accordion or something.
Right.
But there's no visual tool right now that we're using to have someone look at the component library itself.
And does the digital guide have like a style guide functionality or a visual identifier for the component?
There is. So there is, like, you can see the components that come with USWDS. They have an interface to look at the components. We just don't have that linked into our environment.
Got it.
So so this is actually the topic that kind of gave me the impetus to bring up this topic, because the project that I'm working on merging, rebranding that website is using Pattern Labs, and it's moving to a component-based project. And we have the style guide already built in, so it's already hooked in and working. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out. But the thing that really impressed me about that process is I was a little worried about implementing that for this particular project, because it's the smallest team. I'm the only developer. There's a couple other front end guys that can help out, but I was worried about the added overhead. But I started to really see the power, because we were working on moving over a couple of existing components just to kind of test it, and I ended up moving it. Ironically, it was an accordion component. Funny that you mentioned that. And I realized the site that I was working on hadn't had that functionality actually moved over yet. So I had moved over the front end component, got it working on the style guide, saw that it was working the way we expected. And then when I went to tie it into the back end in Drupal so I could see it in the Drupal page, realized that the site I was using didn't even have like that back end functionality to add accordions. And so for me, I think that that's one of the most powerful things. Like, you have the ability to have a built-in style guide to reference, and front end and back end are truly parallel. The front end guy can start working as soon as the designs are done, and the back end guy can start working at the same time, and somebody just kind of has to glue them together.
It also ties in the design team, right? Because there's an understanding design system there as well. Right? So looking at your accordion, for example. Just keep using that. You can say, hey, go look at the component library. Here's the accordion. Here's how it's going to look by default, right? So you can obviously change the open close mechanism, change the style of it. But you already know what features it comes with kind of out of the box, right? Is there an open all, close all button? Is there whatever random feature you want in your accordion? And that kind of gives your design team something to look at and to obviously tweak the styles of, but understand the functionality as well, which is super helpful when they're kind of creating new pages and things like that. Makes the process a lot more streamlined.
I mean, the nice thing too is that the front end, the process used to be like this. Like the designers would design something, hand it off. The person on the back end would have to create some mock-up or prototype or the feature before he could hand it off to the front end guy to start theming it, because there's no way to kind of pull that component in. Yep. And then if the front end guy starts building it and realizes, hey, I need this flag or this switch, and you don't have that, they usually have to hand it back, and you get that built in so that you can figure out how it gets working. But now, if the front end guy needs an extra switch, he just adds it, and that's part of the data that gets passed in. So when the back end person's gluing them together, he can just be like, oh, that field is missing, let me just add it. Or vice versa, if the back end guy realizes, oh, I need to have 3 fields to combine into this thing, for example, the front end guy doesn't care. You just need to get your data into the format that he's expecting.
Nick, what theme did you use a particular theme to connect to Pattern Lab? Are you going to code it yourself?
No, it's a custom theme.
Okay, so it's a custom theme that you've used, like the component module or something to make the connectivity? Okay.
Yeah, so the component module makes it so that the only thing the component module I understand does is it makes twig folders discoverable. And so in my place, all I had to do was turn it on. And the Drupal theme side, all you're doing is creating templates to include the component, and it just works. Right. It's pretty slick. I mean, it's still fairly early in the project, but it's pretty. It's evident how powerful it is, even only a few weeks into it.
If we haven't yet done a show with Jason talking about Pattern Lab, we should get him on, because I know he's done a lot of work and is currently working on a project where they're creating a Pattern Lab component system. So,
the next thing that I've started seeing, and I think this is one of the more interesting things on the list too, is I have a client that's in the process of a very large scale migration, and they're going from a legacy Drupal 7 site to a kind of distributed system of Drupal 8 and Drupal 9 sites. And so they're kind of doing a similar approach on some level, where they're setting up a base theme, and then each individual site will have its own kind of child theme of that base theme if they need to override something. But one thing that they're doing that's really interesting, and this is a problem I've seen not just in the Drupal world, but in general for a long time, they're using that, it solves a really cool problem. They're using built-in web components. So we've mentioned components a couple of times, but HTML itself has component functionality. So it's kind of like the evolution of the iframe. So like the iframe kind of sits outside the DOM, and like you can't really interact with it internally. A component has a shadow DOM, so you can basically define what variables can go into a component, what functionality, what styles go in there, and just give the end user limited control over what happens in the component in the shadow DOM. And when they deploy that, they just pass those variables, and that's the only thing they can do. So it kind of gives you a better way of embedding content. So for example, this particular client right now is using it for the header and the footer and the menu. So they have a global menu that's going to be the same across every site. And rather than needing to kind of just replicate that everywhere, they're using what web components. And so they just include it, like it's an NPM package. They include it on the site. They put the customized web component tag in the header, and any updates that they make to it just get automatically fed in. And like I said, when you're building a web component, you can add switches and things. So you can say, for example, do you want to show a search bar functionality or not? And the nice thing about it is, like I said, they're building like a distributed system of sites. You want the search to be unified between them. You don't want to have to configure every single site to search. So they can have one site that handles search, and then that search bar widget component just points every request back there. Like you don't have to configure that on every site. So it's a really cool implementation. It solves the problem of what happens when you have a group of sites that need small pieces of functionality that are the same everywhere.
It also, it also allows for, and you talked about this with the child theme, right? It allows you to make subtle changes as well. So, that's super useful. Like from a component standpoint, being able to edit a component in one place, have it apply to all of your sites, right? Is great for maintenance, but also being able to layer on top of that the changes per site is super useful. So moving on to our next topic here, I have a question for all of you guys. Admin theme or no admin theme?
Admin theme.
Yeah. I almost always use the admin theme. I mean, there's very rare instances where I don't.
Is your option or use the front end theme for the admin theme?
Well, I guess the option is: do you create your own admin theme, or do you just use a Drupal theme 7, whatever, for your admin theme?
Admin theme,
yeah.
Just the Drupal admin theme.
Yeah, I've always used 7. I'm thinking of switching to, what is it, Claro, or the new there's like a new admin theme that I've seen in a couple of places, and it looks really nice. So
Claro is pretty nice.
I'm probably going to switch over to that.
Use that in a couple of places. No, I mean, I agree. I always set an admin theme. I used to use 7. Now going to try to switch more towards Claro, but I think it makes a good distinction for people of what is like front end content and what is admin interface. But
I have had situations, I'm trying to think of one, but I know I've gone down this road where I've needed some of the admin pages to carry the front end style. And I believe I used maybe a module that allows you to pick a theme based on the page or the URL.
Yeah, so I mean that scenario could happen when you're using like a node page as like a submission form.
Exactly right, things like that, right?
Yeah. The other instance where we've had to create admin themes specifically is, and they've always been like use 7 as a base theme and then very, very minimally change the CSS. But instances where we've needed more real estate for longer text fields on the screen, and we've needed to kind of drop the stuff that usually you see in the sidebar back underneath where it used to be in like Drupal 7. We've had instances where we've had to do that, but typically we're not developing custom admin themes unless there's like a really, really strong use case for it.
The other place I've had to do that is very long select lists in Drupal, because the default admin theme just gives you like, or it used to, it would give you like 80 pixels high, even if the list is like 200 items long. So I try to avoid setting up a child theme.
Don't you use like a form hook for some change like that? You change a theme completely as opposed to the...
So I would say, and this is something I came across
situation.
Yeah. This is something I came across the other day doing my GovCon training. Config split now suggests you install chosen and select 2 JS libraries to enhance their UI to be more usable. And so I did it, and I will tell you that those two libraries, like, I'm not really for not in Drupal core because they make select boxes and select
The most
lists
important thing you were about to say.
way more user friendly.
Your internet's been cutting in and out this show, and it just cut out when you were saying.
And you were just about to say the most interesting thing or something, and then we lost you.
So like the most important thing, and then you became a robot.
Yeah. So the most important thing is like, these two libraries, like you wonder why they're not in Drupal core when they enhance the UI so much. They make it so much more usable. So that could also be something that you think about instead of creating a whole new admin theme or something like that, looking at, Chosen or the Select 2 JS libraries for, kind of enhancing your
simply by including those libraries,
those two modules, they're two modules, Chosen and Select 2. Yeah. I don't know if you need both of them or if one or the other will work. The documentation wasn't overly clear and I didn't have too much time to dig into it. Yeah. But just simply by adding, like I've used Chosen in the past, it makes select lists so much more user-friendly. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
So if you get nothing else from this show, let that be the one thing. The Chosen module is something you may want to look at if you're doing a lot with select lists.
I mean, that and 4 monitors would be the 2 takeaways so far.
6 monitors. Monitors on the ceiling.
Okay, so not to go back down this rabbit hole.
I have 3 monitors, all right? So
I was going to say, one thing that is kind of annoying about having this many monitors is for some reason when I open a PDF,
neck strain.
When I open a PDF, it stretches across 4 monitors, and so I always have to like figure it out. Like I have to minimize it and
bringing it back to theming and building custom themes. One thing that I think, we definitely want to touch on here, and I actually just had this conversation with a prospective client, is adding libraries, specifically JS libraries, to your theme, right? So with everything in Drupal, there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. And I'll give you the scenario that the prospective client asked me about. Is like, you guys know how to add JavaScript, to Drupal sites, right? Because right now we have a script for a third-party service we're using loading 3 times on one page. And of course I said yes, and I explained to him that Drupal has a system for this. They suggest using the Drupal behaviors function in Drupal core to add your libraries to Drupal. Now, in your theme, you can actually add a .libraries folder, file rather, and list out all of the JS libraries that you want to add. This gives you the ability to actually add them, I believe, per template, if I'm stating that correctly. Nick, do you happen to know?
Say that again. The first part, I missed the
libraries file. It allows you to add your JS libraries per template, right? Or per page.
No, you add the library. So when you create a library in the libraries file, you can specify dependencies and like JS files and like CSS files if you need to. And then when you're creating the template, you just attach the library that you need. So if you need a library in more than one template, you just attach in every template you need. If you need more than one library in a specific template, you add as many as you need. And then Drupal kind of handles when a page loads how many they are. So the libraries file makes Drupal aware of where the JavaScript and CSS lives related to that. And then the attachment in the template is what tells Drupal to call it.
Based on listening to this show, you can tell how much front-end development I get into on a daily basis. But yeah, so that's super important because that's going to alleviate the problem of you having JavaScript fire when it's not supposed to. And under no circumstances, or very few circumstances, should you ever put JavaScript directly into a template file. Would you agree with that, Nick?
In general, yes.
Oh, come on.
No, so I'm going to give you the one example where you would put it directly. I recently had a project where it was interacting with a third-party API, and the JavaScript would not fire when it was in a Drupal behavior, period. Like it just, we couldn't put it in a Drupal behavior. We had to do raw JavaScript. We still added it like a library and attached it like you normally would. And we found out that there's a race condition when you are behind a reverse proxy and the JavaScript is not aggregated. So we ended up adding the JavaScript directly to the library to try to debug and nail down where that race condition got added. Now, in production, it's not in the template. But when you're trying to debug some stuff, sometimes it might make sense to throw something in the template when you're trying to... like, this is the only time I've had to do this in years. I felt so dirty doing it. But it was only for debugging and trying to, like, get the JavaScript placed in a very specific place in relation to other pieces that didn't need like the full, like, because you can weight things and order them, but we just needed to get it on a server and see how it interacted. But yeah, in general, if I saw JavaScript in a template file, I would seriously question that.
I also had...
So I think his answer was no, you shouldn't put in a template.
Yeah.
Except if you're debugging, which is okay. If you're debugging something, like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Don't leave it there when you deploy.
I opened up somebody's. Somebody was showing me something, and they opened up a file, a template file in Drupal 7, and it had like a ton of JavaScript in it, and I was just like, oh gosh, oh okay. Close that, please.
Yeah,
all right.
I mean we've come a long way from when PHP was in template files too. So I mean it's gotten much better.
Now we're so particular about what is and isn't in our template files, right?
Yep, it's definitely better.
I've got a theme strategy question for you guys. So I assume, like, if you have multiple sites that you work at, like, especially maybe this is more appropriate for you, John, I'm not sure, but if you have multiple sites that you're working on and you are sharing a common set of a theme across multiple sites, do you basically create that as a base theme and then have the particular website that you're going to customize be a child theme of that base theme?
Yeah, I mean,
so you'd be stacking like classy and then like oomph base theme, and then oomph base theme has like specific website theme. Do you do a hierarchy like that?
Sometimes, if we used to have a really big Drupal 7 multi-site.
Right.
And that's how that was structured. There was a base theme, and then every multi-site instance had a child theme that basically just changed some CSS values and colors, small text font changes, things like that per instance of the site. Yeah, we definitely did that because it just cuts down. It cuts down on maintenance, cuts down on like the areas you need to go to update something. Similarly to what Nick was talking about before with components, being able to basically edit something in one spot and have it apply to all of the instances that are using it is super important.
Right.
Super helpful.
Well, I just a note on the components too. One of the other advantages is you can give it to people that they won't then have access to what's in there. So it's more like an iframe in that sense. So if you're trying to provide a widget to people that you don't want them to be able to change something, then
sorry, I was more talking about the pattern lab.
Yeah,
pattern lab components.
That component, not the web.
Not the crazy HTML components you were talking about, because that was way over my head.
Okay, I think that makes sense. I think there's a couple of other things that you can do that I've seen. I mean, one is like a base theme for an agency, and they use it in a couple of places. Another place that will do that, like I said, my client they're going from like one legacy mono site to several subsites. They have a base theme. I have another project that's using a theme generator though. So you basically have a system that generates a kind of a point in time base theme for a particular project, but it doesn't get tied to that. Because, for example, if you're, and it's probably a better use case for an agency that has many different types of clients. So you want to have like a consistent.
I don't understand what you mean by that. A point in time theme. What do you mean?
So it creates a base theme.
It's basically branching. It's branching the theme.
Yeah.
At that point in time into its own theme.
But
then I don't know. Does it ever get does it ever get rebased off of that?
No.
The branch?
And the reason for that is, like I was saying with like the Bootstrap stuff, like it's very difficult sometimes to update Bootstrap or Foundation because things will break. And if you're using a base theme for a lot of clients, one client might, you might add a new feature to the base theme, but then pulling that feature in will break something on another client site. So now you're having to update the child theme for that client in order to fix something that was updated in the base theme to provide a feature to a completely separate client, which isn't great practice. So the generator basically gives you a base theme that's for that particular project, but it does a lot of the work of like setting up the basic library, setting up the basic front end components that you have. But like I said, it's a point in time. So, it wouldn't generate, you wouldn't get the new components that got added to the generator after you generate it, but it's easy to move front end components like that over if you need to. At that point, you have zero risk of an update to the base theme breaking that particular site because it doesn't get updated from there. It's like a framework it's like what we used to do with, if you think about, you'd have like a database that had some things already installed in like a starter Drupal site.
Sure.
You would occasionally update that. You might add a new module or something, but adding the module to your starter database isn't going to automatically add it to every site that you created from it. It's definitely something to consider. And I'm actually working with one of those generators right now. So with the Pattern Lab project. So it definitely was an interesting thing to learn about. It's definitely an interesting process.
Okay. Well, if you have questions or you'd like to tell us, ask us about, themes in general, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter at Talking Drupal, or you can reach out in the Drupal Slack in the Talking Drupal channel. You can also email us at show@talkingdrupal.com. You can get show updates by signing up for our newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
And we'd also like to take a moment to thank our patrons for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated, especially when you're helping us debug some of the production issues. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and choose Become a Patron. And one of the benefits is you get some of the pre-show and some of the post-show chatter as we're getting ready and signing off. So if that interests you, take a look. John, where can our listeners reach you?
You can find me on all the major social networks at John Picozzi, and you can find out about Oomph at oomphinc.com.
And how about you, Stephen?
You can find me sitting here spacing out at, at Stephen Cross on Twitter with a PH.
You can find Stephen in space at...
And you can find me online pretty much everywhere at NixVan, NICXVAN.
And if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking.
Whew, that was a rough show.